It's a stain on our electoral process, according to Marie Jose Hogue, Canada's Commissioner of Inquiry into Foreign Interference. Hello and welcome to the Unpublished Cafe. I'm Ed Hand. Hogue's report indicates there were attempts in 2019 and 2021 elections, although it did not impact who won the election. Our Unpublished.vote question asks, will Canada's new Foreign Influence Transparency Registry make you more confident in our elections? Yes, no, or unsure. You can cast your vote on this topic at Unpublished.vote. And don't forget to email your MP afterwards using our tool to tell them why you think what you do. All comments on the Unpublished.ca website will be entered into a draw for a one-year membership to Unpublished.ca. You can log on and vote right now at Unpublished.vote and have your voice heard. While Justice Hogue said the outcome of the election was not impaired, it is troubling. Charles Burton is a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute and a former diplomat at Canada's embassy in Beijing, and he joins us now. And Charles, we've spoken quite a bit about this issue in the past. Does this report and the NISCOP report vindicate what you've been saying?
Oh, yes. Over the years, I've done about 230 op-eds since 2006 in the Canadian national press, but talking about these issues, political influence and Chinese subversive operations in Canada. But my discussion has been more or less anecdotal or circumstantial evidence saying, well, this is going on in Australia, maybe it's going on in Canada, because, after the Australian Act came through, there were revelations about senior Australian officials who had not been open about receiving benefits from China. But with the CSIS documents that have been leaked based on wiretaps of Chinese diplomatic facilities and other pretty compelling evidence, it suggests that the kind of stuff that I had suspected very strongly was going on has been affirmed by solid evidence. And these are the documents that Commissioner Hogue and the NSICOP committee have been looking at. The problem is that the really good stuff in those documents, it remains redacted or classified and known to the people who are on the Hogue Commission or on NSICOP, and of course known to CSIS, who produced those documents. But unfortunately, we're not being given that evidence so the Canadian public can see it for themselves.
I don't think there's any surprise that China was at the top of that list, but why so much of a target to influence Canada and Canadians?
Well, I think because they can do it. We've only had one Chinese Ministry of State Security agent operating in Canada who has been declared persona non grata and expelled back to Beijing, and that was Zhao Wei. That one of the documents revealed had been attempting to gain information about the family of the conservative foreign affairs critic Michael Chong, with a view to trying to intimidate and coerce him to not vote in resolutions favoring Canadian acknowledgement of the Uyghur genocide or other Chinese activities, including the need for a foreign influence registry that Mr. Chong has been championing. So, we know that there are a very large number of Chinese diplomats accredited to Canada, and we estimate that considerably less than half of them are involved in legitimate diplomatic activities. In other words, if you have a Chinese diplomatic cohort in Canada that's reported to be about 176 people, and Japan only has 45, then you've got to think that a lot of those 176 people are not needed for normal diplomatic functions, but are engaged in espionage and influence operations and not consistent with the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, whereby foreign countries are not supposed to interfere in the political processes of the nations that their diplomats are accredited to. So, there has been apparently considerable reluctance on the part of the government to take this matter seriously. There was resistance to the Hogue Commission for quite a long time by the government. Now we have it, and so I think the real concern for all of us is, will effective measures be taken to deal with this issue and to expose any MPs that have been receiving benefits from Chinese sources or other foreign sources, and put an end to foreign influence in our democratic institutions, so Canadians can feel confident that the members they're electing are being elected for Canadian purposes and not to serve the interests of a foreign nation.
How does China attempt to influence electors or elections?
Well, I think there are essentially two things that they do. The Chinese Communist Party has an institution called the United Front Work Department, which is actually more manned and better funded than the entire Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Most of its mandate is internal in China, but a significant portion of it is involved in trying to influence foreign countries to adopt policies that will not be hostile to China's geostrategic desire for expansion and influence, and ultimately to assume control of the international community in the context of China's conviction that the United States is in decline, and that they can debase the UN and the WTO and develop a new world based on Chinese norms. So you have this institution, the United Front Work Department, and specifically in democratic regimes, they have two approaches. The first is to put persons of Chinese origin who are loyal to China into key positions in democratic legislatures. And the second is to try and influence people in the Canadian and other foreign country political processes to support Chinese purposes through very sophisticated psychological engagement. I mean, some of it is just your good old bribery or, blackmail, or they go to China on the Canada-China legislative exchange program and then get trapped having been videoed with attractive Chinese women in bed in the hotel, that kind of thing. But a lot of it's much more subtle, where they start to engage Canadian politicians early in their career, provide them with funding, provide them with support in their campaigns, people banging signs into lawns and sealing envelopes. And over time, hoping that these people will rise into positions of influence in the target country and will feel beholden to their Chinese friends for all the support they've received over the years. And we have seen, some examples of Canadian politicians who have been seen to be involved in activities of fundraising which seem very closely associated with the Chinese regime through the front organizations and the police stations and so on that they're operating here in our country.
Charles Burton is joining us in the Unpublished Cafe. He's former diplomat at Canada's embassy in Beijing as we discuss foreign interference in elections. And Charles, India, Pakistan, Iran, and Russia were also named as trying to influence. And it just seems Canada's, everybody wants to influence Canada. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that, we don't seem to be doing as much as our like-minded allies in dealing with this issue and exposing people who are receiving benefits from a foreign state. So, certainly we've put together this new act, the Bill C-70, which has made some improvements to the CSIS Act and the Security of Information Act, and developed a Foreign Influence Registry. Will it be effective? Will the government use obfuscating order in council regulations to interpret the act that will make it ineffective? Or will a very weak figure be appointed, the Commissioner for Foreign Influence, that won't be, making the hard decisions to expose people in senior positions in the government who may have got themselves into a situation where they are beholden to a foreign state? If one was the CSIS or the RCMP, would you really want to be engaging in investigations of your bosses? The political masters that the RCMP and CSIS reports to Or would you just, let that one slide and hope that the politicians will take care of this issue of people who should be fully committed to Canada, who have divided loyalties because they've been subject to, playing on their naivety and greed to start to act on behalf of a foreign state. It's a very complicated and difficult issue, and one which we don't seem to have the kind of moral backbone like the United States or Australia or Britain to undertake in a serious way. And, it's possible that some politicians, according to the NSICOP report, may in fact be guilty of actual criminality and should be potentially brought to court and if convicted, end up in prison. It's that kind of seriousness in this sort of affair.
There have been calls for the report to publicly name those MPs or senators who have been mentioned in the report. Do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think I'd like to see more activity on the part of CSIS and the RCMP. I mean, for example, if CSIS has good reason to believe that some senior members of our government have been engaging in collaboration with espionage, say, there's one part in the NSICOP report where it suggested a former parliamentarian was making arrangements to meet with a security agent of China or foreign power abroad. So, I mean, if they have evidence of criminality, then one would hope that they would provide that to the RCMP, who could undertake an investigation, and if this is proven, bring charges, and the person could have an opportunity to enjoy Canadian due process of law and defend themselves in a court of law. But for the other ones, which may be guilty of lesser offenses of being a bit too close to the Chinese regime, and as alleged, say, providing personal information about vulnerabilities in certain individuals, I wish that CSIS would go and see those MPs and say to them, we've observed this from you, and you ought to stop your relations with the representatives of a foreign state and their proxies, or you may find yourself subject to the Foreign Influence Registry. But the current situation, where apparently absolutely nothing is happening, and some of these people that are alluded to in the unredacted version of the NSICOP report and in the secret documents that Justice Hogue has access to, and possibly a large number of documents that NSICOP and the Hogue Commission are claiming are being illegitimately withheld by the government, that these people may be running in the next election and will continue to benefit from support from a foreign power, and could continue to be beholden to that power and voting in ways in Parliament and engaging in debate in the cabinet on behalf of foreign interests, and not, as they should be, entirely on what's in the good of Canada, our security and sovereignty. So, I'd just like to see something happen rather than nothing, which seems to be the current state of affairs.
Charles, I want to thank you for joining us.
It's been great to speak with you, Ed.
Charles Burton is a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute and a former diplomat at Canada's embassy in Beijing. Needless to say, there is some political hay to be made with this issue. Tom Parkin's an NDP strategist and commentator, and he joins us now. And Tom, Jagmeet Singh says he's alarmed by what he's read in the report. Why would he continue with the agreement with the Liberals then?
Well, we're not going to get to the bottom of this by having an election. In fact, if we have an election right away, it would be tainted by exactly the problems that we've all talked about, and many of us, I strongly feel, Mr. Poilievre and Mr. Trudeau are downplaying. So I welcome him hitting the alarm bell. I think Canadians, by and large, agree with that from what I'm seeing in the polling information. And what's got to be done is to fix the problem, pressure Mr. Trudeau to do that, and then we can have a secure election when people know that their democratic rights are secured, and we know the names of these people who are apparently named in the report, and how dramatic their sins have been before we put them on ballots and potentially vote for them all over again. So let's get the cart and the horse in the right order here.
Now, do you find it worrisome that most of the federal leaders know who those were under the
Yeah,
influence, but we're not getting names? Do
but
you find that concerning?
yeah, we don't. I kind of understand why, because not, it's just kind of, it could turn into kind of almost a McCarthyist,
Hmm.
naming names kind of stuff. So I get it. But it is frustrating. And trust me, I mean, I have some people I have deep suspicions about. And I wish that we had a way of confirming that. And I guess I hold out the hope that the Hogue inquiry, now that all this is being referred there, will get to the bottom of it, and eventually we will find out the details of who did what and when.
Uh, Jagmeet Singh calls those in the report traitors.
Yeah.
How does he work with those people, knowing that they've been named, and he
Well,
obviously knows it.
he knows who these are, and these folks are, so he can deal with them as he sees fit. This is a quite different situation than Mr. Polyev, who refuses to get the security clearance and refuses to read the report, even though this report apparently says, apparently we can read it the words ourselves, that the conservative race, the one that he won, was tainted by foreign influence. And yet he doesn't want to find out the depth of that foreign influence, who was influenced, was it negative or positive influence? If I was a leader of a political party, I would want to know who sits in my caucus and is potentially leaking information to foreign governments. I just think it's an incredibly stupid thing. And again, if you look at polling, uh, most Canadians do not agree with Mr. Polyev uh, being the monkey can't see, can't do. As much as they are frustrated by Mr. Trudeau, who's been kind of the monkey who won't act on this. We can go back the Han Dong affair, and if
Hmm.
we can, I'd like to strike on that one because I think that's the most public
Sure.
thing. Um, this was brought to him before the 2019 election that the Chinese consulate, the Chinese government, was busing people to Han Dong's nomination to vote for him and make him a candidate. And this was revealed to Mr. Trudeau a couple of days before the nomination deadline in 2019. And not only did Mr. Trudeau not act then, but he let Mr. Dong be a candidate again in 2021, which I just find, you know, um,
Mhm.
just stunning. And I'll say, Ed, I have been in the past a candidate for nomination in the NDP. And if I believed, or if I read in the newspaper that my competitor who beat me was having people bust in um, by a foreign government, I would be screaming bloody murder, and I would be absolutely outraged. And yet, the prime minister did nothing. It's really, really disgraceful. So I think yes, we have to hit the bell hard, let the chips fall where it may, uncover every rock, however you want to say it, because the more the more the truth gets out there, more information gets out there, the more secure our democracy is, and the better result we will get whenever we get to the chance to vote.
Now, one thing pointed out by the Hogue report was that the nomination process can be subverted. Now, each
Yes.
party has their own process. How does the NDP address those concerns?
Well, I think that's a very interesting point that she raises, and I have always been of the position that um, the nomination processes are the party's own problems to address, and I have to admit I'm a bit moving in my opinion of that in light of what we've read. Um, we have, because of first past the post, seats that are bastions for for one political party. Any of the four major political parties really has them, and so getting the nomination is the deal. And if there's no legal standards around that, it makes it hard to try and prevent parties from accepting that foreign influence or corporate influence or any other inappropriate influence is just kind of part of the game, and then we'll let it all happen and we'll hide it under the rug afterwards because it is embarrassing. Um, so I am kind of leaning towards the position that maybe there needs to be some sort of, if not, direction to political parties about how to run their nominations. Perhaps something like minimum standards which they can work with to make sure that we're not in situations where some external agency like Elections Canada can't evaluate a process and declare it to be void. That's solely left up to the leader, because in Trudeau's case, clearly that hasn't worked.
India, Pakistan, Iran, and Russia also named as trying to influence the elections. Why would that be?
Well, just for their own reasons. I mean, we've seen diasporas from India, Pakistan, Iran, and China be hounded and harassed. We've seen people killed. A man was shot to death, on the steps of his boudoir just a little bit more than a year ago, and very, very strong information. In fact, there's a prosecution from the U.S. By U.S. District Attorney that this was the work of somebody that was funded by ultimately the Indian government. Whether Mr. Modi knew about it or how that works out, we don't really know. But this is significant stuff. When people are being shot, killed by foreign nations in Canada,
it doesn't sound like a democracy.
It's terrifying. And I have enough friends in politics who've come from other countries to know that many of them feel that the country that they left, maybe they didn't leave on the greatest terms. They wanted to get away for all kinds of reasons, and they have opinions about the country that they left, which I think most of us would find to be good opinions, like that their country didn't uphold human rights, didn't respect minorities and minority religions, etc. So they come here to get some freedom, and then they are allowed to be, they want to engage in the political process, and they're harassed. They want to be involved in their religious institution, they're harassed or even shot. So, I think this is just major stuff, and I gotta believe we saw a dip in Trudeau's, the Liberal Party's support this month, and this was the major story of June, I think, and so we might be able to link those two.
Bill 70 passed about 5 days ago, and do you think this new Foreign Influence Transparency Registry will help at all?
Well, it's something that has been called for, and I don't think it's a negative, but I think what this problem ultimately comes down to is that if leaders are not willing to listen to the reports from CSIS about the goings on within their own parties, then there's really not much that other things will do. Maybe they can force them into the light a bit more, but I don't believe when CSIS comes and tells the Prime Minister that his candidate has had his supporters bust by a foreign government to his nomination, and that results in no action. That simply listing the people who are registered is going to do much more important. So I think it has to go to a leader, and the embarrassment of his failure to act.
Tom, I want to thank you for joining us.
It's been my pleasure, Ed. Thank you very much.
Tom Parkin is an NDP strategist and commentator. Our Unpublished.vote question asks, will Canada's new Foreign Influence Transparency Registry make you more confident in our elections? Yes, no, or unsure? You can cast your vote on this topic at Unpublished.vote, and don't forget to email your MP afterwards using our tool to tell them why you think what you do. All comments on the Unpublished.ca website will be entered into a draw for a 1-year membership to Unpublished.ca. You can log on and vote right now at Unpublished.vote and have your voice heard. Now, joining us to discuss the issue is Marvin Ryder from the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University. And Marvin, which party do you feel should be most concerned about the revelations of foreign influence?
Well, I think that's easy. That would be the governing Liberal Party. It's been in office since 2015, and therefore, although some of these interference measures may have gone back a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades, really we hold the party in power most responsible for running the election. So if Mr. Trudeau needed another problem, here it is.
With the announcement of the registry and all the public chatter about foreign interference, along with those reports, do you feel those trying to influence will lay low now, or do you think they'll try and double down on their efforts?
Well, I don't know if I'll use the phrase double down, but I don't think they're going to lay low. The question of interference is a very difficult one because the person who is trying to contact an MP and influence him doesn't wear big flashing lights that says, I'm a foreign person trying to influence you. If you think about an MP's office, they field hundreds of questions almost every day, hundreds of phone calls. So you get a phone call from somebody who doesn't like government policy on some issue. Well, that's not news. We're always calling our MP to complain about something. There's too much of something. There's not enough of something else. So the idea of interference coming with a bright red flag just isn't there. Now, hopefully, wise people start to put pieces together. So if I'm raising money for an MP and a donation comes in that just doesn't quite look right, hopefully I'll send off a signal. But I think all this is likely going to do is make them smarter at what they're doing. They'll find an expatriate. So, for instance, if I'm China and I'm trying to influence a Canadian election, I'll find someone who's come to Canada from China. They've now woven themselves into the fabric, and I'll use them to funnel a donation or to exert some influence on an MP. I don't think it's really going to make much difference.
You know, we have these reports have come out, and there's been a number of comments about the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, doesn't have his security clearance to read them, yet he still obviously throws out his opinion. At some point, does he have to sign that security clearance, or does he just continue shooting off his mouth?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say yes, he should. Now, let me just back up a little bit and put it in context. Sure. Elizabeth May, who heads the Green Party, and Jagmeet Singh, who heads the NDP party, have taken the appropriate steps to get their security clearance. And they have read the unredacted document. But interestingly, they've come up with two different conclusions. Elizabeth May read it and said, oh, poof, boy, we dodged a bullet there. I'm very happy. I'm not worried about my colleagues in the House of Commons. Yeah, there are some things to investigate, but it's not the big smoking gun we thought it was. Jagmeet read the exact same document, the exact same words, and he came out and showed great concern. So it strikes me that a potential future Prime Minister of Canada should be getting his security clearance. He should be reading the document, whether it is to give him more ammunition to use against Mr. Trudeau, or knowing that he may be faced with these exact same questions when the election is held in 2025. How can he look people in the eye and say, I have confidence in what's going on, if he's not read the document to see what the allegations are? So it is just a matter of time. Maybe he had a busy spring. Maybe the paperwork was too much for him. But I'd like to think that before the fall comes, he'll dot the I's and cross the T's.
Do you feel it's prudent that the leaders who have read the reports should name names, or is this something that could wind up in court?
Well, the document has not been released for a very good reason. Although investigation happened by a parliamentary committee, this wasn't all sworn testimony, deeply investigated, corroborated. They were looking to see if there was some smoke that they needed to look after, and they found smoke. Correctly, they have said, now we need to have proper investigators go in and check this all out. So if I said to you that person X, here's person X, and for instance, one of the allegations we heard, person X received an extra $100, or there were 20 people who showed up at his or her nomination meeting to cast a vote for them, and we think that's wrong, person X has to be able to defend themselves there. You could have assassination here just by bad character reference. So I don't think it's wrong not to name names. I don't think it's wrong to not necessarily release the full report. But I do think it's important that we have a full investigation, the results of which then get made public. And if there are more than one person who've done bad things, we should root them out and expose them for what they are. But if this is very gray, again, everybody who calls an MP is trying to influence them one way or another. If it's something like that, then no, I don't think we should make a mountain out of a molehill.
Marvin, I want to thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Marvin Ryder's with the DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University. Our Unpublished.vote question asks you, will Canada's new Foreign Influence Transparency Registry make you more confident in our elections? Yes, no, or unsure. You can cast your vote on this topic at Unpublished.vote. I want to thank our guests today, Charles Burton, Tom Parkin, and Marvin Ryder. And I want to thank you for watching the Unpublished Cafe. Stay safe. I'm Ed Hand.